I am Father Steve ANGI, STEVEANGI, Chancellor of the Archdiocese of Cincinnati.
I am Mike SCHAFER, SCHAFER. I'm the Director of Communication and Mission Promotion for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati.
First, we want to thank everyone for coming this afternoon and inform you that the purpose of the press conference is to supply the press release with information that led to Father, should be on your press release. My apologies for the headline where it says Dr. Drew. It should say Father Drew. He's not a doctor. That was my typo just a few minutes ago. So the reasons for the press release, or the reason for the press conference is the Archdiocese responding to Father Drew being placed on leave of absence. In addition to the press conference today and the press materials I've handed you already, I'll send them to you digitally after the press conference, and we'll also send you video file clips of Archbishop Schnurr on camera. He was not able to be here for this press conference, but we do want to supply sound from him, so there will be 3 sound bites from him sent digitally after this. The text of those sound bites are in the press release, and then we have an extended press release to get through, and then we'll put it open for questions if anybody has any. So Mike SCHAFER is going to do the presentation with the information.
Thanks, Jennifer. What I'd like to do at the start here is to acknowledge the emotion of this topic. It's a very emotional subject. I'm a father myself and the father of 3 boys. So it's very easy for me to understand the emotion of parents relative to anything having to do with the safety of their children. I'd also like to acknowledge that last Monday we were very poorly prepared to present what happened and what transpired when we were at St. Ignatius of Loyola Parish, and for that we were very sorry. We know that it probably did more harm than good, and hope that this explanation of things will help move things in the right direction. I'm going to give a sequence of events that led to Archbishop Schnurr removing Father Drew as pastor at St. Ignatius. In 2013, and again in 2015, the Central Office of the Archdiocese received concerns from St. Maximilian Kolbe parishioners regarding Father Drew's behavior. Father Drew was the pastor at that time at St. Maximilian Kolbe. The alleged behavior involved a pattern of such things as uninvited bear hugs, shoulder massages, patting of the leg above the knee, and inappropriate sexual comments about one's body or appearance directed at teenage boys. This behavior naturally made the boys feel very uncomfortable. In addition, there was one report that Father Drew texting some of the boys, quote, teasing them about their girlfriends, close quotes. The concerns that were reported to our central office were promptly forwarded to the Butler County Prosecutor's Office and Butler County Children's Services. The investigation by the prosecutor's office found no evidence of criminal wrongdoing. Having received notice that the prosecutor's office had concluded its investigation, we should have investigated either on our own or through a third party, but we did not, and we failed by not doing so. We apologize for not following up more aggressively on these allegations. We should also note that conducting a third-party investigation in such a circumstance has been our standard operating procedure for the past year. Bishop Joe Binzer, in his role as Director of Priest Personnel, addressed Father Drew's behavior with him on 2 separate occasions prior to 2018. Father Drew said he was unaware of the concerns of his parishioners and said that he would change his behavior. The central offices of the Archdiocese then received no complaints about Father Drew from October 2015 until August 2018. With the departure in the summer of 2018 of Father St. George as pastor of St. Ignatius, St. Ignatius became what is known in the Archdiocese as open listed. That is, the Priest Personnel Board advertised the open position to the priests of the Archdiocese and invited indications of interest. Father Drew indicated to the board that he would like to be considered. Father Drew said that his elderly mother lives close to the parish and he would like to move closer to her. He was not asked to leave St. Maximilian Kolbe Parish. Under our policy, he could have stayed at St. Max for an additional 3 years. In August 2018, the month after Father Drew was assigned as pastor of St. Ignatius of Loyola Parish, the central office of the Archdiocese received a complaint via letter from a St. Max parishioner essentially reiterating the 2015 and earlier concerns. This was the first time that Archbishop Schnurr was informed of Father Drew's behavior. This letter was turned over to the Butler County Prosecutor's Office for investigation. In September of 2018, at the recommendation of the Butler County Prosecutor, Father Drew was asked to restrict his involvement with the school during the investigation and was assigned a monitor, essentially someone to meet with regularly for accountability, and he did meet with that person regularly. Our acceptance of the recommendation to put a monitor on Father Drew, the recommendation made by the Butler County Prosecutor's Office, was a mistake, and combined with inadequate oversight was an approach that we will never repeat again. In October of 2018, Bishop Binzer received a letter from a St. Ignatius parishioner describing her son-in-law's very negative reaction to Father Drew, dating back to his experiences with then Mr. Geoff Drew at Elder High School. The son-in-law stated that Father Drew inappropriately touched his leg and made him feel very uncomfortable. This letter was promptly forwarded to the Butler County prosecutor to inform their investigation, which was already underway. Father ANGI, as Chancellor, received the Butler County prosecutor's investigative report in early February of 2019. The prosecutor's office again found no evidence of criminal behavior. Because the allegations involved possible violations of the Decree on Child Protection, Father ANGI commissioned Strategic HR, an independent investigative firm used by many organizations and major corporations, to investigate. This investigation began in February of 2019. Father Drew was asked to continue to restrict his involvement with the school during this investigation. In May of 2019, Father ANGI received the investigation report from Strategic HR. The investigation uncovered no criminal behavior, but recommended that Father Drew be provided professional and targeted counseling surrounding his emotional IQ and how he interacts with people in the way he both communicates and physical interactions. Father Drew began attending counseling sessions with a psychologist in June 2019. Also in June of 2019, while Father Drew was in counseling, a complaint was received by the central office from a St. Ignatius family alleging that Father Drew had texted their teenage son. This complaint was immediately turned over to the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office. Their investigation confirmed the texting, which is a violation of our Decree on Child Protection, but revealed no criminal behavior on the part of Father Drew. The content of the text messages was completely innocuous. I'm not revealing it because I don't want to inadvertently reveal the identity of the young person who received them, but it was really the texting at all that was a problem, more so than the content. Given the pattern of behavior in contradiction to our Decree on Child Protection, Archbishop Schnurr removed Father Drew as pastor of St. Ignatius on July 23rd, placing him on a leave of absence and ordering him sent for comprehensive physical, psychological, and spiritual evaluation at an independent inpatient treatment facility. On July 31st of this year, Deacon Tim Helmick was named as temporary administrator of St. Ignatius Parish. We obviously made serious mistakes in our handling of this matter, including in 2013 and 2015, we should have launched an independent third-party investigation of Father Drew and not relied solely on the criminal investigations. This, as I mentioned earlier, is now our standard operating procedure. In 2018, when we put restrictions on Father Drew's interactions with the children at St. Ignatius, we should have put much stronger verification in place, including telling certain St. Ignatius parish and school leaders. We apologize. We were wrong. Moving forward, we will not have any monitored or restricted priests. If there are serious concerns that have the semblance of truth, the priest will be put on leave of absence pending investigation and will be subject to appropriate action based on the results of the investigation and other circumstances. This is consistent with how we treat serious allegations against lay staff members today. There will be one consistent standard of conduct, whether one is a priest or a lay person. We are also working on personnel and procedural changes to ensure that every member of the Priest Personnel Board has complete insight into a priest's background and profile before an assignment is made. And I think you're aware of the first of those moves with the announcement that the Archbishop made this morning of the change from Bishop Binzer to Father David Endres as Director of the Priest Personnel Board. Also, at the request of the Archbishop, Father ANGI will be commissioning Strategic HR to conduct an independent investigation of Father Drew all the way back to his employment as music minister at St. Jude Parish. And this will include Father Drew's employment at Elder High School and all the way up to the present day. Are there any questions about that narrative? That takes us up to the point of where Father Drew was removed as pastor.
Can you tell us how many priests were on restrictions or were being monitored at the time the Archdiocese made the decision to no longer allow monitoring or restrictions of priests?
Only one, Father Drew.
Father Drew was the only one who was being monitored or was on restrictions.
That's right.
At the time.
That's right.
Who was in active ministry?
I'm sorry?
Who was in active ministry, monitored or restricted? I worked with Craig he called last week about Father Heiss. So is there anything specific in that regard?
Well, Father
you're
Heiss
asking?
is not on, Father Heiss is on leave of absence. He's not on monitoring.
Or restriction.
Right.
Okay, I didn't ask if he was, but
Oh, I was just clarifying, just so we know.
I want to differentiate between leave of absence and monitoring. In this case, we left Father Drew in his current position monitored, asking him to restrict his access to the school. The other priest mentioned, Father Clarence Heiss, is actually on leave of absence, not in active ministry.
why is Father Heiss on leave of absence?
I'm going to have to turn that over to Father ANGI.
As we placed on our website, the reason why Father Heiss is on a leave of absence is the investigation is pending. And while the investigation is pending, of course, we cannot comment on that at this point until the investigation is complete.
Okay.
Is it related to the child consent decree? The reason that he's on leave?
He's on that page. He's on the Protecting Our Children page.
Correct. And the answer is yes.
I'm sorry. The answer is yes, that the investigation is investigating a complaint concerning a possible violation of the decree on child protection
Yes.
with Father Heiss.
Yes.
Can we ask some more questions?
Yes, you can ask as many
Mike
questions you want.
or
Yeah,
Father
Mike or the other.
Angie? So you had these complaints about Father Drew back in 2013, 2015. Why wasn't anything done at that time? What was involved in the decision-making process that did not include removing him from his position as pastor at St. Max?
At that time, whenever we received a complaint, either in 2013 or 2015, our standard operating procedure was to refer those immediately to the appropriate civil authority. And that's still our standard operating procedure, and we did that. Those complaints were forwarded to, what's the county again?
Butler County.
To Butler County. And then after their investigation and their findings, Bishop Binzer had conversations with Father Drew about his behavior. And Father Drew said that he would amend his behavior, that he wasn't aware that these were problems, and he would change his behavior. The mistake there is we believed him, and obviously his behavior, as we now know, did not change. And that was, well, maybe perhaps not criminal, was in violation of our decree on child protection. Today, if that happened, we would, as I mentioned earlier, place him on leave of absence, and we would launch our own independent third-party investigation because while his behavior may not have been criminal, it was not appropriate for a pastor, and we would not tolerate it.
So my question is, when you acknowledge that it's inappropriate behavior, why would you leave it up to him to police himself and keep him in the same position
Clearly,
in 2013 and 2015?
right, clearly a mistake.
But why? But why was that decision? I understand it's a mistake. You said it's a mistake. Why was that decision made? And who made it?
Well,
Was
the
the
person,
Archbishop, was the Archbishop aware?
the Archbishop was not aware. The Archbishop was not aware until August of 2018. So the Director of Priest Personnel, which was Bishop Binzer, was in charge of following up as appropriate with Father Geoff Drew, which at the time, I believe, he thought he did. I don't think there was anything malicious intended by Bishop Binzer, but clearly his follow-up with Father Drew was not strong enough, not definitive enough, and in hindsight, we would never do that again. That's why we're changing the procedures that we have.
So I apologize for kind of
No, it's all right.
asking all the questions here, especially to my colleagues, other reporters. This doesn't make any sense that Father Binzer, apparently, I guess, is the only one who was receiving complaints, and then Father Binzer made the decision whether or not a complaint would be shared with the Board of Priests, Board of Personnel. I mean, how does that work? I mean, does it only go to him, or does it go to the board? Are these complaints shared with the central office at any level? I mean, how did that process work?
I'll let Father ANGI address this as well, but I would say as the opening part of that Father ANGI in the Chancellor's office is aware that the complaints were forwarded to the Butler County Prosecutor's office because his office interacts with the prosecutors. But Bishop Binzer is the liaison to the Priest Personnel Board. Father ANGI is not on the Priest Personnel Board, and so that information did not make its way to the Priest Personnel
Okay, so
Board.
Father ANGI, you were aware every time a prosecutor's office was contacted with complaints, is that correct?
I'm only aware when a complaint is passed on to me, and then I submit a letter to the prosecutor. If a letter would come to me, I generally attach the letter to my letter to the prosecutor and forward it on.
So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but you're not on the personnel board. So
I am not
there's
on
a
the priest personnel
disconnect
board.
Between you forwarding information to the prosecutor's office and the board receiving that same information. Is that kind of where this?
Generally, when I receive a report and I forward it on to the prosecutor's office, generally I inform Bishop Binzer that I have done so, and then I generally also inform Archbishop Schnurr that I have done so, as well as individuals within this building like risk management and others who need to know this information.
Is the Archbishop aware of the identities of priests who are being investigated or examined by prosecutors?
The answer is yes, as long as the information is given to him.
Okay, so was the information given to the Archbishop in 2013, 2015, related to Father Drew? Was the Archbishop aware that the prosecutor's office was examining evidence involving allegations against Father Drew?
The Archbishop became aware of allegations involving Father Drew in 2018 with the letter that was sent to him.
Sir, with all due respect, my question is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I have the impression that once the prosecutor's office is notified by the Archbishop evidence offered by the Archdiocese, that at that point, the Archbishop is aware that a prosecutor's office is examining evidence involving involving allegations made against a priest, and that the Archbishop, is aware not only is the prosecutor's office examining this evidence, but the Archbishop is aware of the name of the priest who is being investigated by a local prosecutor. Is that correct?
That is correct, if that information is given to the Archbishop by whatever's been reported.
Okay. And you're the person who was aware that these incidents involving Father Drew were being investigated by a local prosecutor's office in 2013 and 2015, is that correct?
In 2013, that information was forwarded by Bishop Binzer to the prosecutor's office. And in 2015, that information came via the Victims Assistance Coordinator, now called the Coordinator for Ministry to Survivors of Abuse, and that information was provided to the prosecutor's office.
So you didn't know that prosecutors had examined evidence based on allegations against Father Drew in 2013 and 2015?
I knew that they I received no report from the prosecutor's office indicating that they were.
That's not my question,
Okay.
sir. My question is, did you know that the Butler County Prosecutor's Office was examining evidence based on allegations made against Father Drew 2013 and 2015?
In
Were you aware of
2015,
that?
yes.
You were aware of it in 2015?
Well, because our Coordinator for Ministry to Survivors of Abuse sent me a note to forward to the prosecutor's office. So I simply penned a note to the prosecutor indicating that this is the coordinator's report to be sent to the
So
prosecutor.
you were aware in 2015 that the prosecutor's office in Butler County was examining evidence involving allegations against Father Drew?
I don't know if they were examining evidence. All I know is it was forwarded on to
You were
them.
aware that the information had been forwarded to the Butler County prosecutor?
Correct.
And you were aware of that in 2015?
Correct.
Okay. So once you became aware of that in 2015, did you share that information with the Archbishop?
With Bishop Binzer, I did share that as Director of Priest Personnel.
Right. But did you also share that information with the Archbishop, that a local prosecutor was examining evidence involving allegations against a priest? Did you share that information with the Archbishop?
Generally, I share that with the Priest Personnel Director, who many times will share that with the Archbishop.
So did you personally share that information with the Archbishop?
I did not.
Are you aware of any individual or group of priests or anyone else who shared that information with the Archbishop?
Am I aware? I'm not aware personally myself.
Okay, so there was not an automatic.
What I want to get out here is, what you're poking at is a communication flaw in what we did then. So in other words, the answer is no. Archbishop Schnurr was not informed by Father ANGI or Bishop Binzer. I don't know if that's because each thought the other would do it or what have you, but he was not informed in 2013 or 2015. The first time Archbishop Schnurr was aware of these behavioral allegations was August of 2018. I want to make one other point clear relative, and we'll entertain more questions. I want to make one other point clear relative to the Priest Personnel Board and the assignment of Father Drew to St. Ignatius Parish. Because some of you have probably seen the Catholic News Agency report. He was not transferred to St. Ignatius Parish. That was an open position. He was allowed to apply for it or express interest in it. He did, and he was selected to go there. Again, the Priest Personnel Board did not have this information. Now, what I want to say is this. It's really irrelevant that St. Ignatius has a very large school. It shows a much more of a spotlight on things. But if a priest is not safe around children, he's not safe in any parish. And that's the structural change we put in place now. It really has nothing to do with whether there's 2 children at a school or 2,000 children at a school. You're either safe to be around children or you're not. And that's basically that. So some people said, there's been a question, how could you transfer this man or allow him to take the job at St. Ignatius? Well, it's not like it was any more acceptable to leave him in place at St. Max. That's my point, is that if they're not fit, if a man is not fit to be pastor, he's not fit to be pastor anywhere. And so that's basically a solid point I want to make here, is that the only thing that we really easily could have just as easily found out about these things had he stayed in place at St. Max.
Why wasn't he removed from his position of pastor after the initial complaints came from St. Ignatius?
The only complaint we got from St. Ignatius was the family of the boy who received text messages. The fall complaints were still from St. Maximilian Kolbe.
Once you received those complaints, what type of investigation or look back was done? When was it done? And were you able to determine that he had this type of a history? And once you determined he had that kind of a history, why wasn't he removed then?
Well, as I mentioned earlier and I think is in the press release, after the legal investigation was concluded that showed, or the Butler County investigation that showed no criminal behavior, that's when Father ANGI contracted with Strategic HR and had them do the independent investigation, and that concluded in May of 2019. Their recommendation, after talking to probably 20 or more people from St. Max, that was the look back at his previous parish. They weren't talking to people at St. Ignatius. They were talking to people at St. Maximilian Kolbe. That their recommendation was the targeted, professional and targeted counseling surrounding emotional IQ and how he interacts with people, how he communicates, and how he interacts with them physically. And that's what we started in June. And within a couple of weeks of starting counseling, we received this allegation of text messages. And at that point, the Archbishop said, we've seen enough. It's time to remove him as pastor. So the look back, if you want to call it that, the entire investigation in the fall was still looking back to the days at St. Max, not at St. Ignatius.
Was he ever placed on leave of absence at St. Max during those investigations?
No, he was not. That's a change we're implementing now. He will, not he, but anyone in this sort of situation will be placed on administrative leave pending investigation, much like Father Clarence Heiss is on administrative leave pending investigation. We're not going to wait to find out whether the allegations have merit or not. We'll put the person on leave while the investigation is going on.
And did Bishop Binzer make any sort of record of these allegations written in a personnel file of some sort? Was there any record that he had past allegations against him?
He had some written notes in his own files, not in a personnel file.
Nothing that anyone else would have access to?
Correct.
And is it true that Bishop Binzer is on the Committee on Child and Youth Protection? Is that true? That's something
For the USCCB, yes.
Is that something that he's still a part of?
As of today, yes.
Do you feel in this case he protected children?
I think he could have acted more strongly on behalf of children with Father Drew. I want to make sure that I'm clear. I don't think that Bishop Binzer, who is the hardest working, most sincere servant of the people in this area, would never intentionally put a child at risk. But I think in hindsight, he relied too much on Father Drew's assurances that his behavior would change. And I think that was a mistake.
I know that you all have had one meeting, another that's been canceled with parishioners. Do you have any further meetings at either parish, St. Max or St. Ignatius, scheduled to speak with those parishioners?
We met with the faculty and staff of St. Ignatius this morning, and we're going back to meet with St. Maximilian Kolbe, or going to meet with St. Maximilian Kolbe tomorrow night at 7 p.m.
We're still referring to Father Drew as Father Drew. He's on administrative leave.
He's still a priest.
He's still, okay. So, but while he's on administrative leave, he is not allowed to present himself as a priest or provide priestly services?
Correct.
Can you explain what he's not allowed to do?
I'll leave that to Father Angie. I'm a little out of my depth there.
When one is placed on administrative leave, that simply means that they cannot present themselves as a priest. They cannot dress as a priest. They are not free to celebrate the sacraments, to celebrate Mass. That's,
But he can still refer to himself as.
no, you cannot
Father.
refer to yourself as father while on administrative leave.
Is the Archdiocese still referring to him as Father?
I think,
Obviously, I am.
I think we are
I'm
here.
not trying to be,
Yeah,
you know.
right. I think here we are because that is how people
Fair
know
enough.
him.
Okay.
In the parishes who may also see this press conference as well.
But clearly administrative leave is a temporary status, and
That is correct.
if he's taken off administrative leave and doesn't receive any further disciplinary action, he would basically go back to his status as a priest with all of the things that go with that. Is that
Yes,
correct?
if an investigation is complete and exonerates someone, then they are restored to ministry. If it does not exonerate them, then there are other disciplinary issues that can come up.
Can you talk about the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office is asking people to contact them if they've had any interactions or complaints or concerns. So, you know, I assume there's some degree of interaction with the prosecutor's office. Are you aware of, have you been made aware of whether or not criminal charges will be filed?
No, we've not been made aware of that. I do know that they're receiving a number of reports, as could be expected with all the publicity around this. And of course, we are urging people to contact either the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office or the Butler County Prosecutor's Office if they have any information, know of, or experienced anything that is worthy of report regarding Father Drew.
Are you aware of how many reports they received and what time period that covers?
No,
Would you tell us if you did?
I guess so. I mean, I think that you know, I don't know that you want to know that we've received 32 points of reports of creepy behavior, but I think the main
How many
thing,
have you received?
I don't know. I mean, you know, I don't know.
Have you received additional reports since that meeting, since that request was
I don't know,
made?
have we received? I'm sure the prosecutor's office probably has because we've been directing people to the prosecutor's office. Have we
Sounds like
personally
Father
received?
Angie can talk more about that. Can you discuss that, Father?
Yeah, any reports that have come in, people are encouraged to contact the prosecutor's office. And if any reports come in to here, I also immediately forward them to the prosecutor's office.
Can you talk about the number of complaints and the type of complaints that you have forwarded? And how, you know, give us kind of a feel for that.
Most of the complaints that have come in that I have seen are very similar to some of the complaints at St. Max.
You say most of the complaints. Can you give us an idea of how many complaints?
I can only estimate because
Father Angie, more than 10?
more than 10, no, not more than 10. I want to say maybe 7, 6 or 7.
A handful.
So you believed about 6, you're aware of about 6 or 7 complaints?
That have come here to me,
That you
yes,
forwarded to the prosecutors?
yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Are there any other reporters that have
That's
maybe a?
from St. Ignatius? The
Um,
handful of complaints that's,
I think they're,
Or
she
is
asked
that
if they were
total?
specifically from St. Ignatius. but-
They're from St. Max, St. Ignatius,
so.
yes, so I mean from the various parishes.
Did any of them include Elder High School or Jude?
None of the current ones include Elder High School, no.
Jude?
St. Jude, I have received some for St. Jude, yes.
Some means more than one, Father?
Yes.
Thank you.
In English, yeah.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I understand the timeline. I apologize if this was asked earlier, but you said the Archbishop became aware in August 2018. What were the circumstances that allowed him to become aware of that then?
And the circumstances were that in August of 2018, he received a letter directly from a parishioner at St. Maximilian Kolbe Parish who reiterated the concerns that apparently had been previously expressed in 2013 and 2015. And that's how the Archbishop became aware of this. It was a letter written directly to him.
And what did he do after receiving that letter?
He, I guess I don't want to misstate this, Father ANGI, I would say that that letter was sent to, I would imagine, to you, and it was forwarded to the Butler County Prosecutor's Office, which is a standard operating procedure for investigation. And as I said, the Butler County Prosecutor's Office asked that Father Drew's interaction with the school be limited while the investigation was ongoing. And then once that report was received on that investigation, Father ANGI made the determination to do an independent investigation because of concerns about the behavior, the continued behavior, and even though it wasn't criminal. In the narrative of events, I want to point out that the central offices received no complaints about Father Drew from October 2015, after Bishop Binzer had interacted with him about his behavior, until August of 2018, the letter I'm referring to. In August of 2018, Father Drew was already pastor at St. Ignatius. So I'm not in any way implying that Father Drew's behavior had changed during that time period, but we have 211 parishes in this archdiocese, and we had not received a complaint during that time frame. So, there was no apparent indicated action during that time frame until the August 2018 letter was received.
So in August 2018, then the Archbishop then became aware of 2013 and 2015 as well. Like at that point,
Correct.
he knew all of that? Okay.
Right.
And but the decision was made to leave him at St. Ives.
Well, the prosecutor's office did not want us to make a change while the investigation was ongoing, and as I acknowledged earlier, that was a mistake. We will not take that recommendation again. In the future, we will put the priest on leave during investigation, but at that time, we took the Butler County Prosecutor's Office recommendation to simply restrict his access to the school. And I can't reiterate enough that we apologize for acting in that way or taking that course of action. That was clearly a mistake, and we will not repeat it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got it.
I want to make sure that your colleagues also get a word in edgewise.
I get it. I get it. You just said, and you were referring, I believe, to the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office. The Prosecutor's Office did not want
No,
us to
the letter that was received was still allegations about St. Maximilian Kolbe in Butler County.
Okay.
So the letter received in August of 2018 was forwarded to the Butler County Prosecutor's Office.
So it's
for investigation.
It was Butler County that made that recommendation to
Correct.
not make a change.
They said to just simply limit his access to the school while we're investigating. I know that's dissatisfying to you, but it's dissatisfying to us too. I think it was a bad decision, and we will not be repeating it.
Are there any other reporters, Anna?
I was just wondering about the pastoral care of the people at St. Ignatius. How long will it be without a pastor? And, what kind of support is being sent to them?
Well, as you know, we've named Deacon Tim Helmick as acting administrator of the parish, and Father Dave, what is Father Dave's last name? Kobach, a Franciscan who also is still there and providing for them. We will be working with them closely, and Archbishop Schnurr, who intends to attend all the priest personnel board meetings from now on, has as a top priority to find a permanent pastor for St. Ives. I don't want to speculate on who that might be, but there's obviously some urgency to it. But one of the things that the Archbishop wants to avoid is any non-collaborative effort in the future. He wants the priest personnel board to have complete information and pick the right person. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but hopefully within the next couple of months, we'll have a permanent pastor.
Do you maybe speak to how we've been working with them, communication efforts and sharing materials?
Yeah, I mean, we've been sharing materials with them and communications and stuff, but as far as pastoral care, we'll have to see what, we would of course provide support for anything that they want to do moving forward for healing and moving forward.
There are parishioners who say that the Archdiocese has not shared enough information, not shared enough, and not shared it soon enough.
Right, I understand them feeling that way. As I mentioned earlier, if I was if my sons were at that school, I'd feel the same way.
Last question for me, I promise.
Oh, I don't believe you.
At this news conference. I just want to make sure that I understand the restrictions and monitoring that was going on with Father Drew. Were these all voluntary until he was removed as pastor? And if the monitoring or restrictions were not all voluntary, what restrictions, if any, were in place? And how was that monitored and or enforced?
Well, first of all, it was I wouldn't say it was voluntary in that he was told to limit his interaction with the school. It was obviously not enforced or regulated adequately, because he still, as we know, appeared at the school on several occasions. And the monitor was a person that he met with, and monitor may be the wrong term, but that's what we call it, a person that he met with for accountability purposes on a regular basis, but that person wasn't tracking him 24/7. So a lot of that was going off of his own self-reported, much like you'd go to an AA meeting and tell us how the last week was. That was more or less like that, as opposed to we're tracking you 24/7 or you've got to clock in here or any of that. And as I mentioned before, it's clear to us this was a flawed strategy. We will not be repeating it.
I'm sorry.
No, you said last now. You said
Yeah,
last.
I was mistaken. So how has it changed? Have you said that? How has it changed? How will a priest be monitored, other than just
A priest will not be monitored. That's how it will be changed.
But I mean,
He will be put on administrative leave pending investigation. He will either be fully exonerated and put back into ministry without hesitation, or he will be otherwise disciplined. This is how we do it with teachers and staff today, lay teachers and staff. In my 2 years here, we've probably put a dozen teachers or staff members on leave. We always say that we've received an allegation. We do not know whether these allegations are true or false, but for the protection of the children, we're putting the person on leave pending investigation. We do the investigation, and probably of those 12, I would say we've probably reinstated 4. They were completely exonerated. The allegations were without merit, and the 8 teachers or faculty members or so were ultimately, fired. So I think that the Archbishop has stated very clearly that he wants no separate standard for lay employees versus priests, and so that's how we're going to proceed moving forward.
Just so I'm clear on going forward, the new system is going to be such that the Archbishop will be made aware of any complaint related to the consent decree?
Yes, we've put some procedural things internally that no matter who receives a complaint, whether it's verbal or written, whether it's anonymous or associated with a name, it's going to go to one central place, which is our Joe Reedy, who's our coordinator of Safe Environment. He keeps a spreadsheet of all active cases, and that spreadsheet's going to be reviewed regularly with the Archbishop. That will include both clerical or lay allegations. And as I mentioned earlier, the Archbishop intends to attend all priest personnel board meetings himself personally in the future.
In regards to the Catholic News Agency report today, is there going to be an investigation of Bishop Minzer under the new motu proprio?
I do not know the answer to that. I think you'd have to ask that from the nuncio's office.
Is there any reporters in the back with questions? I can't see. Okay. Well, if that's the entirety of questions, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.